I wanted to close that door.
If you want to. Hi, everyone. I think we're live now. The little green texts are going on. And I just want to welcome everyone to our sixth monthly Bar Talk series. This one is about film and television. And we have Judell and Brian Bromberger. And I'm Jim Provenzano, the arts and nightlife editor for the Bay Area Reporter. We have 50 years of cinema and television coverage to cover in an hour or more. As I was telling the guys off camera, I was trying to screen cap a lot of the images from pages over the years, and some really major films are omitted, so don't get upset, David Weissman, if I forget to mention you, Mark Smolowitz, because I took hours and hours of trying to get all this stuff together. So anyway, I want to ask, first off, and we can just converse about films when we show the images, Brian and then Brandon, just tell me what got you into writing about cinema?
Well, I was raised, and my parents were very much into films, and we were, from a very young age, we were always taken to movies, and often movies that were really kind of adult movies. But my parents, if we had any questions, my brother and I could ask about it. And so it was really ingrained early in me, that love of cinema. I think, and then as I grew older, and I read more about it, I just realized that this was something I wanted to make a connection between what was happening in my life, versus what you saw on the screen. And as I came out, naturally I want to say, well, how are LGBTQ people, represented in screen? And of course, this was in, really the very late, very early 80s or whatever, right before AIDS came. And it was kind of a very mixed record in terms of LGBTQ people. But I wanted to see my experiences, my queer experiences, where they validated on the screen. And so I just wanted to explore that and, discover films I may have missed, most of which at that point probably were worth missing because there weren't that many very good LGBTQ films. But I don't know, it just developed from that. So I think it was a way of trying to understand who I was as a gay man, and then trying to make those connections in terms of other people's experiences and learning from them. How I could be a more, complete whole person.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. So when you remember your first review or write up?
Yeah, it was I wrote, yes, it was like in the early 90s, like around 1991. I used to write for the Sentinel.
That's right.
Sentinel, which was the rival newspaper of the B.A.R. And I was there for the last 4 years of it, and before it folded in 1995 under Ray Chalker, the very famous editor and also owner of the Rawhide Country Western bar, which was popular at South Market here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, he was quite a. He made Bob look like a Mahatma Gandhi by comparison.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I remember one time walking. I mean, the guy had lots of money, but I remember one time walking into his office, and on the floor there was all like $10 and $20 bills, literally hundreds and hundreds of this money just thrown on the floor, and I had to walk on it to go.
That was from the bar. That was like bar money.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah, and it was just kind of just been thrown. He hadn't counted it all yet, I guess.
Oh, couldn't be bothered. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, Brandon, you've always lived in New York, or did you live here for a while? You were always in New York?
I tried to live in several other cities, but they always sent me back.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in the Bronx, and I don't know if people on the West Coast know about the Bronx, but
I'm from New York originally. I know the Bronx very well.
Hugh Gardens here. I was born in
Hugh to brag about. Anyway, there's so that's not really a great place to come out, especially in the 70s or whatever. And when I was coming out, the only gay voice positive was Arthur Bell in The Village Voice.
Oh, yeah.
And so later he became my mentor, which is wonderful. But the So I would read that, and then I got involved at Lehman College, starting a gay group, and then attending the Gay Activist Alliance and a queer improv group and everything. And then I had a friend who started getting published. And even though I'm very insecure about my own talents, I knew I had more talent than he did. So I said, well, if he's published, I could be published. And then I had the brainchild of going to every publication that was starting out. So I started out at Gays Week, and then, which was one of the first gay publications back then. And then it just went on. I'm sort of the kiss of death, except to your publication. I've been in for about 40 or 50 publications, and I think the Bay Area Reporter is the only one still around.
Washington Blade is still there.
Oh, yeah. I think I must have wrote for them. It's everybody. But it was the first celebrity I ever interviewed, which was a cover story, was Holly Woodlawn. I don't know if you remember her from Trash.
Yeah,
Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
So
Back
she
to
was
the factory.
right. So and then slowly, because I was writing about entertainment, I started having affairs with people in entertainment. Like I was communing with one of Candy Darling's best friend, and so we had a thing. So because of him. Candy Darling, if you remember, she's a famous. We still use drag queen anymore. It seems.
No, transgender.
We'll get canceled if it's wrong. They'll tell us.
Okay, well, she looked like Kim Novak, and she looked gorgeous and blonde hair. She was the first person I ever saw dead, and they put her in a sparkle gown, laid her out, and it looked like she was still breathing because. That's why I want to be buried in sparkles, to freak out people.
Okay, noted.
There's a documentary made on her a few years ago. It was quite good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, Brandon, you're not the only person who's written for every dead gay publication or website known to man. I had my spark. Did you write for the Out Week when I was there?
Yes. Oh, Out Week, yeah. I think, yes. It was Out Week after Gays Week.
89 through 91 was its.
Yeah, no, so right.
That's where I met you, because you in the old days, people had to come in with discs or mail them. So for all you kids, there's these things called discs. They were about the size of your wallet, and you would have to mail it to an office if it was like when I was writing for Frontiers.
Yeah.
And actually writing for the Sentinel before I came here and got a job with the B.A.R. And then if they were nice, they mailed them back to you along with a printout that you mailed for proofing. But I was trying to remember how we sent stories to each other in those days. And I was the collector at the B.A.R. from the early 90s, where faxes, and then we'd have to transcribe the whole darn thing, or the typesetter would do it, or, oh my God, it's so primitive. We're the last of this generation of people who worked on pasteboards and, teletypes. And so go ahead.
Yeah, I got my first computer in 84, so I was writing before then. But remember, I did an interview with James Baldwin, and that was typed. And I'm a terrible typist for a writer, or even for a plumber. I'm a terrible typist by comparison.
Yes.
So they had a headache, but that was fun.
So when did you both start writing for the B.A.R.?
I think the earliest article I found was around 1990,
okay.
1991.
And Brian?
Well, I would write. I wrote a few articles. I started off with books, actually. I started reviewing books, and I was doing that in the late 90s. And then I was gone for a while, and then came back probably about 9 years ago, I think. So.
Okay. All right. Well, glad to have you. Glad to have you back, Brandon. You pitched a few things. Victoria Brownworth is our longtime television columnist. Her Lavender Tube column has been with the paper for, I think, 10 to 15 years. I found an early one that you can see. She could not be with us. She's indisposed, as well as a few other film writers who are either camera phobic or in transit, so they will not be with us. What I wanted to do is just gloss through a little slideshow of about 50 images from almost one per year, but there are a few years where there's worth showing more than a few. So as we did in rehearsal, I'm going to share my screen and allow full screen and allow, and we can look at that. Can you see that? Is that nice? Yeah. Okay, so this is our little banner of the combo screen, some of the best that actually Brian did for our 50th anniversary issue this April in 2021. He did a lovely 2-part expansive series about pretty much the best of everything from most the highlight years. And these are a few of the films he touched on. If you don't know who any of these people or films are, you're probably in the wrong chat forum right now, or you're very young. Because these are some of the pivotal films of the many years. This is from the first issue, April Fool's Week in 1971. It was obviously hand typed. And this is when Bob and his partner his work partner did it on a kitchen table. They literally pasted it up with fonts, letter sets, and they wrote about a straight film.
Right, it was depressing, wasn't it? Most of Cassavetes' films.
Yeah. Cassavetes' husband, yeah. I mean, it has a homoerotic element. When anything with Ben Gazzara is homoerotic, as far as I'm concerned. But I just like I can watch the guy eat lunch.
Yeah, as opposed to Peter Falk, yes.
Well, I don't know. In his earlier days, look at them. I mean, they were manly men.
I interviewed Ben Gazzara near the end, and I said, "Why do you have no wrinkles?" And he said, "It's genetic. His grandmother had no wrinkles either."
Oh. Good Italian peasant stock. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty classic. This is from the September 1971.
Death in Venice.
A classic of the time.
And there's a new documentary that just opened on the boy who plays Tadzio.
Right.
This month I think it's called The Most Beautiful Boy.
Boy in the World, yeah.
Right, how this messed him up.
Yeah. It's a
basically straight. He was straight too.
Right.
Weren't we all?
I remember trying to hunt down the locations when I actually was in Venice with one of my other gay pals from the university I was with for the summer in 1995, and trying to figure out the locations, and it didn't make any sense because a beach is a beach, but I did find the gay beach. Anyway, this was a very disturbing film. I saw it at a much too young age of 17 and thought I was going to be doomed for life, but it was
one of the great actor. I mean, one of the great gay actors, Dirk Bogarde. I mean,
of course, yeah.
Who kind of came out. He wrote several autobiographies, and if you read in between the lines, it was clear he was gay. But
didn't he do that gay film in the 50s?
The Victim, 1961.
Oh God, yeah, what a classic!
Yeah, that's an important film. Yeah.
So Visconti, he's out or dead?
Yeah, he was gay.
When he was alive.
Yeah, he was out. Yeah.
I love the ad.
I mean, he's dead, but I mean, he was out when he was
out. I love the ad for Dial a Model. I really want to call up one of those guys. So the early films were sometimes not byline. This is funny because Anne Bancroft is in a Western, and it's reviewed by Montezuma, who was probably one of the editors who just didn't even have someone to write for him. And I love the clip art. So this is a controversy that I mentioned off camera to you, Brian. 1973's The Laughing Policeman starred Bruce Dern. It was shot in San Francisco, and it's about a murder between gay people. And
is this in the cruising kind of element?
This is what's fascinating, because it precedes Cruising by several years, but with a policeman hunting down a serial killer, allegedly gay guy. And it was a huge controversy because they were filming it in San Francisco. And Dern committed to it's a 3-page interview. I mean, there's another page too where Walter Matthau, and I don't remember if I've seen it, but it had a very gritty, obviously early 70s style. Dern plays calling homosexuals fruiters and treating them as definite second-class citizens. The film was made here in San Francisco with the cooperation of the police department and actual members of the homicide division. It just goes on. It's fascinating. I call them fruiters because there's a certain homicide detective here who calls them fruiters, said Dern. So, fruiters. Never heard that before or since. But anyway, so the Don McLean was one of the early arts editors of the paper. He wrote this. I love the fonts, but it's pretty expansive considering how young the paper was and how frivolous it was by comparison. And then we're going to mix TV and film interchangeably so I can go chronologically. But this was front page news, apparently, a TV episode of Marcus Welby, MD. A 14-year-old boy deals with the sexual molestation of a 14-year-old boy. And then it goes on to say how homosexuals are pedophiles. And I remember the controversy because I was 14 at the time-ish, I think, in the 70s. But I'm just find it interesting that sometimes an issue like this gets front page coverage in the B.A.R.
Well, I understand because there was, I mean, especially with television in those early years, there were so few things done on gay issue or LGBTQ issues that it was big news when something did pop up. So.
Yeah, and when they did it wrong, it's interesting that the B.A.R. got onto it. Speaking of representation and Donald McLean, here he is as Beverly LaSalle in one of 2 or 3 episodes of All in the Family, where he plays one of Edith's friends who happens to be a drag queen. And Don was doing drag while he was co-editing the paper at the time. I don't remember if this was his real drag name or if they gave him the character name of Beverly LaSalle.
I think it was the character name.
Oh, okay, because he did have a different alternating drag bylines for various columns that came and went in the paper in the 70s.
And in the last episode on that, they actually killed off this character.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
That must be the only person they killed on All in the Family.
Yeah.
Not many murder plot lines. This Don McLean isn't the same person who sang American Pie.
Good for one.
He's not. He's not by any means the same person. That's why he used Donald. But yeah, this clip is on YouTube. This and I think the second clip, not the I'm not sure which one, but
yeah. And in the first episode, she kisses Archie Bunker.
Right? Yes, a classic. Look it up on YouTube.
Yeah,
show some respect. So another thing I noticed is, well, if you can look at the lovely photos of Roy Scheider and Paul Newman, the paper early on, Donald also regular films like The Drowning Pool and Jaws. If there was a handsome fellow in it, usually that was the pretty much or if there was a camp icon like Lauren Bacall, they did review straight films, but not very often. More in the mid 70s because there seemed to be a dearth of gay films. And here's lovely Ron Eli.
Oh, Tarzan, television's Tarzan.
But here in this film, he's Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. So you can see there's a special focus that Don is taking in his film reviews. And what else but A Star Is Born?
The worst version of it.
For 1976.
Chris Christopherson and Barbara Streisand.
Right.
Quite a showstopper. I remember seeing this with some friends in high school and getting stoned, and one was this straight guy who didn't like it at all because he didn't get it. And I was like weeping by the end. Are you watching me now? Because I had seen the Judy Garland version, just not the Janet Gaynor.
It's infinitely better than that one.
Well, any good homosexual of a certain age should have seen at least 3 of the 4 or 5 different versions of this story. But this was huge. I mean, this was the year where there was like nothing else but Barbra Streisand in this film. Anyway, an inexplicable pink section paper. For a while, they decided to go with pink pages. Unlike the Advocate's Sex Center's pink pages.
Good. This was John Hurt playing Quentin Crisp in The Naked Civil Servant.
It is.
It was on television. I think it was on television, actually.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was on KQED, Channel 9, in July or August of 1978. So note the lovely fonts.
Yeah. Quentin lived in a very small apartment on East 3rd Street, across the street from the Hells Angels, and he had a hot plate.
Yep. He would go out to dinner with anyone who would pay.
Yes. I invited him to my birthday party, and he showed up.
Because there was
Free
food.
cake, nothing else.
Well, he hoped it was food. But,
I was so lucky to have attended a dinner. Tom Steele of Christopher Street had a group dinner, and I was one of the young twinks to be a writer in training. For some reason, I got in. And I didn't say a word. I just listened because Quentin Crisp was there.
Yeah, he was quite amazing, one of the wittiest people.
Yeah, but it's funny. For years, I thought John Hurt was gay, mainly because he was so good in that. But he isn't. He was straight. He died a few years ago, and he had been married for many years to a woman.
Oh, he died of heterosexuality?
Yes.
I didn't know he was straight.
Well, I saw him in Midnight Express before this.
Right, that was again another kind of gay role. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there was a review of it, but I couldn't find it in the paper. Here's John looking fabulous even again in the jump page.
Yeah. I interviewed Brad Davis, and he came out of his room with just wearing a towel.
Well, that must have been a pleasant experience. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, lots of them do. So did Jean-Claude Van Damme. He was lying on his bed while I was interviewing him. It's sort of strange.
Lucky you. Did you roll him over?
No, I never touch and write.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'm going with.
I just meant he likes to show off his rear end so often in the films.
Yes.
So, Brandon, you mentioned that you interviewed the director of Le Cachafol?
Yes, and that's in a later issue of the B.A.R. Reporter. I don't know what year, whatever. I have these by year. And he was quite wonderful. The Closet was that another? It was also remade into American film, right? With Robert.
It was a Birdcage, and it's not.
No, that's Le Cachafol.
Yeah.
No, but I meant his other film, The Closet, or.
Oh right, yeah, it was. It was called The Closet. Yeah.
Yes. So.
Bumping on the TV, this very diminished coverage of soap, which is now on some cable channel now. You can watch it.
There was another early gay show on Showtime called Brothers, where one brother was gay, and most people have totally forgotten that one.
I never forgot it because Chris Maloney was in it. Oh my goodness, with hair.
Yeah.
I just was amused by the B.A.R.'s minimal coverage. I looked up other coverage of soap and I didn't find much. Apparently the paper seemed disinterested. We're moving into the 80s. Of course, the biggest story was the controversial film Cruising. Would either or both of you care to describe to someone who may have never heard of it what happened?
Al Pacino plays gay. He's a cop trying to solve somebody who's killing homosexuals. And it was Arthur Bell sort of got hold of the screenplay. And then that other film you were talking about, The Laughing Policeman, we had our own version in New York where people were going through the streets screaming while they were trying to film. And homosexuals who agreed to be in the film were sort of booed and looked down upon about people who didn't get cast.
Right, yes. They blew whistles. That's why they had to dub it.
Right.
Every exterior scene and many interior scenes had to be redubbed and looped because the sound that they couldn't. And William Friedkin, who made other
boys in the band,
and The Exorcist.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Yeah, it was a big deal. And Brian, you mentioned
again, it was a theme, a perennial theme, which Vito Russo talked about in his class,
right.
Cellular Closet, about the gay or the lesbian person as maniacal killer.
Right.
Was Basic Instinct about the same time, or was that much later?
That came later in the 90s, Basic Instinct. Again, and people were fed up just because of it. They just had enough of that. So.
Yeah.
About a lesbian with an ice pick.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get there. 10 more years, and the girls get to be evil too. So this is kind of a throwback. It's about 1980, but it's in our earlier anniversary issue. Wendell Ricketts writes about various things, but there was just Stop the Movie Cruising. There was just a whole general Gay Power, Gay Politics was a documentary on CBS.
A documentary, yeah.
That's what the focus here is. Gay porn newcomer John King opened Jocks. He's doing a kind of summary of what happened in 1980. We used a lot of these anniversary issues to supplement our recent anniversary issue because it's so succinct. But I just wanted to show this picture of these piled up guys. And with Charles Spears, who we're not talking about theater.
Mr. Castro pageant.
Castro pageant, yeah. And here's a small little item about the 5th anniversary of the 5th annual San Francisco International Gay Film Festival. They had yet to bring in the other three descriptors in the title back in 1981, and they were selling tickets on the corner, and that's early.
That was the first year. 1981 was the first year it was done at the Castro Theater. It started off in somebody's backyard, and they would put up a bed sheet and
yes,
project the
Mark
film.
right. Mark Eustace will tell those tall tales.
Machen in Uniform was shown there. There's a new, better version that's just been re-released.
Right.
And it's really powerful. It's really definitely worth watching.
We were classic.
About a girl's lesbian love in a German school.
You mean a remake or
No. There have been remakes. The original version, it's
remastered, probably.
Right. Sure. Brian's very good with words.
And here's Vito. A long, lovely Dan Turner did a long Q&A with Vito about his book, The Celluloid Closet.
There's his book right here.
Documentary.
At one of these meetings where Vito was giving a lecture, he said, how many people have seen an Arnold Schwarzenegger film? And about 3/4 of the audience raised their hand in this gay film festival. Then he asked how many people have seen Parting Glances, and maybe 15 raised their hand. And he really said, you have to get out there and support gay movies.
Wow, that has a big impact. Yeah, but considering how great Parting Glances is, as we discussed earlier, I have very distracting
It's still one of the best AIDS films ever made.
Yeah, I think so. And then, speaking of questionable, I went on a date with a guy I was dating in college to see Making Love, and I hated it. But I love Michael Ankeen, and so I endured it. What did you guys think of this? Do you remember the controversy?
Well, it was an important film because it was one of the first gay films that had a happy ending. Because again, it was about a married couple. I think it was Michael Ankeen, and then married to Kate Jackson, and then he falls in love with Harry Hamlin, and basically they wind up splitting up. But I mean, they all kind of lived happily ever after, which was a big deal because it was one of the first kind of positive film about. But the problem was it was about rich people essentially, because I think Michael Ankeen was a doctor, and I think Harry Hamlin was an architect, and and they just it was like
Well, then the doctor could afford the house that Hamlin would build. But somebody said about this film, Hollywood was trying to make money off a gay story, and still today nobody's really known how to do it.
It was actually a dud. It was considered kind of dull, and it didn't do really well. It did okay the first week, but then word of mouth said it wasn't very good.
So just as a film, I loved seeing these guys play gay, knowing they were straight, despite Michael Ankeen's earlier film Slapshot. But that was provocative and sweet. But it was just, as a film, it felt like a TV movie of the week.
But they were both very bitter about it because they both claimed that it destroyed their movie careers. Harry Hamlin later kind of recovered it because he went to television and was the star of L.A. Law. But Michael Ankeen just kind of, his career never really did go, get back on track.
Did that Mariel Hemingway film come out the same year where she got
a Personal Best, where she played the Olympic, the runner, the athlete in the Olympic. I think that was 81, and this was 82.
A friend told me, I thought she said both of these were in the movie theater when she went, and she knew this was in Florida, and she knew everybody in the movie theater was gay because those were the only people.
Funny. So jumping ahead to another just generic film festival coverage in '84. There's a nice lineup of the films coming up. Jean Genet. I can't read too much. Man Eaters, Undressed to Kill. There was a lot of, anyway, as the film festivals took over every year, of course, we had to do lots of extra stuff. And then the first Oscar, 1985, the Oscar goes to the documentary.
For the people who gave us RuPaul. Isn't this Epstein and what's his documentary?
Friedman.
Yeah, but they're not World of Wonder. They're not.
They're not World of Wonder?
That's Fenton Bailey. That's Fenton Bailey, and the other one, Randy
Barbato. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then I was in East Berlin before the wall came down with the guys who did this film,
Okay.
And I always thought they did RuPaul, but
No.
So please fact check my articles.
Well, I've interviewed all 4 of them over the years, so yeah, I know it's.
But,
not
that was really. I mean, I still think that's one of the still great documentaries made. And the other one that you didn't have a clip for, but that's worth mentioning. In 1977, is The Word Is Out, which was really the first gay documentary made by gay filmmakers. It was what's his name? Perry Adair, or I can't think of it, or Peter Adair. And he was the main one, but there were other people. But it has these wonderful, had 26 interviews of some well-known gay people like Harry Hay and Sally Gearhart, who just died this year, and as well as, and I think Pat Bond, the lesbian actress, and but it really showed just gay people leading normal, regular lives. And it was enormously popular. It was so popular because the way I encountered it is in a book, because they made a transcript of the film, and it became a best-selling gay among gay people, LGBT people. It was a big bestseller. But again, it was Vito Russo said it was the first. It ended the silence of gay people were actually able to talk about themselves and their own experiences. So he thinks it's really one of the most important documentaries.
Also, there's one of the first gay Asian Americans talking about being that, and for gay Asian Americans, that was a major step forward. What's that documentary on gay films from the 90s? Fabulous. Do you know what I'm talking? It's called.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I know what you mean.
One of the best. I always show it to my class, and it blows their minds that gay films weren't always there. Well, I don't know if we're talking. When did VHS tapes come out? That was
in the 80s.
Well, we have to say they popularized gay films because if you were in Iowa or Idaho, and I don't know why you'd be there, you could not get gay films until these videos came out.
Yeah.
And then that revolutionized the porno industry too, because
well, we have all chat that we did 2 months ago about porn. I can't get into all that, but that was very, very fun and racy, and it's surprisingly still up on YouTube. But yeah, Word Is Out was pivotal. I remember seeing the film and then realizing when I met Teddy Matthews that he was in it, and I met him like 30 years later in the mission we went to at some literary thing, and then it led to going out to Esta Noche, and he got me high in the alley. That was my first week in San Francisco. Let me go back to the.
But the Times of Harvey Milk, I mean, I always thought it was better than the later when the Milk film came out, the Gus Van Sant one.
You mean the narrative?
I felt more emotion from the documentary than I did from the film, but I think it was so important because luckily they interviewed a lot of the people that knew Harvey Milk, most of whom are now dead, and and they were able to interview them, and so but also it was such a tonic because it was one of the I didn't see it. I was still living in New York. I hadn't moved out to San Francisco, but it was such a tonic because this was in the middle of really the AIDS crisis, and it really was an uplift. Well, I mean, even though it's such a depressing story, it was an uplift, that he was such an important figure, and that he won the Academy Award, and people felt like gay films were finally being recognized for their for their creativity and their importance, historical importance.
Yeah.
So it's a really key documentary as well. So.
Yeah. No, it was. It certainly had I remember watching the Oscars when it was nominated and just bursting into tears with millions of other gay people watching because of that, because we knew what it meant. I mean, and I don't think there's another community that would feel that way except for the Black community, which was omitted and snubbed by the Oscars for decades and years, and any people of color who just are like, finally,
Didn't, when they accept the award, did they say their lover or something, or they hugged or something? There was a first for the Oscars.
Yeah, that was the first time.
They were just friends. They weren't lovers, those two.
Well,
right. I think they thanked their own partners.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. There was some gay thing that was there.
And it wasn't until, I mean, I think Harvey won, I forget who else won, but I knew Howard Ashman briefly.
Yeah.
And then when he won, and Bill Lauck accepted for him because he had died of AIDS.
Right, that's when he won for Aladdin, but they had won for Beauty and the Beast, and also I think for Little Mermaid as well.
Yeah. So anyway, let me go back to the lovely slideshow. No, not video file. I'm going to share screen. I'm trying to share the screen. Oh no! I just opened an application that I don't want to open. Let's go to. So you guys. So TV became. This was an odd moment in television, as I'm sure you recall. I don't recall what it was, but there were always persistent rumors about
Burt Reynolds
having proteges with this little theater.
His affair with his director there was the rumor.
Yeah. Anyway, and speaking of classic cases, this is Alan White, the late Alan White, writing about just trying to summate the whole Hollywood response to AIDS and to Rock Hudson, thus signifying new hysteria. The subhead reads. And
remember that whole thing because he had kissed Linda Evans on Dynasty, and everybody was worried whether she would come down with AIDS, which of course is nonsense. But.
Yeah, I was on the set of the Colbys, and I did a whole article on the kiss.
Wow.
So, and what's his name? Who is Haley Mills? Is Juliette Mills' husband, who was so hot, who was in the Colbys?
Maxwell Caulfield.
Maxwell Caulfield.
I was interviewing Maxwell Caulfield while he was in a bathing suit, swimming backwards and forwards. He was so gorgeous.
You really getting into these great...
I was going to say, you get these people in very compromising positions.
Well, with my face, they're not threatened because they know nothing will happen.
No!
Well,
I got to see Matthew Caulfield in Salonika in New York.
Yes, me too. We were all...
Naked in the Sand with Jessica Tandy. And then he did Loot in LA. I happened to be in LA, and I asked some very sly, I can't remember what I said, but it was a very sly question about homosexuality and Joe Orton, the playwright, and how blah, blah, blah. And he just gave me the most cute answer, ignored all the old ladies in the audience after the matinee, and gave me the answer right to me, and I was so flushed. Yeah. I got his program to sign afterwards and told him I'd seen him in Salonika 100 years before, and he was very impressed. Anyway, on to the next round. Parting Glances, the greatest gay AIDS film ever.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's certainly up there.
Who's the actor again? Who's that photo of?
Steve Buscemi.
Steve.
What?
Yes.
Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi.
Right. I went up to. Oh, I know, but I went up to Steve Buscemi. I wasn't coming on. I said, I have his poster over my bed in this film, and he snubbed me.
Oh, that's too bad.
I don't know. Maybe he thought it was a come on or something.
Yeah, and it was so sad because Bill Sherwood, who was so talented, and died a few years after that of AIDS.
And so many untalented people are still living.
What are you gonna do? Here's the talent, James Ivory.
Here's one of my all-time favorite directors, James Ivory, and it's talking about one of my all-time favorite films, A Room with a View. E.M. Foster. That was one of the films, even though technically it's not a gay film, but of course, Ivory Merchant were both gay.
Yeah.
But it actually, the Daniel Day-Lewis, the Cecil character, really in the novel by E.M. Foster, is implied that he's gay. I mean, there's a line something like, well, women would have no interest. It was kind of a back way of saying, that he was probably gay or whatever. But it had a gay sensibility to it, and I think that's what I picked up on.
Oh yeah, weren't they lovers? He and his producer.
Oh yeah, no, they were a couple for for almost 50 years before Ismail Merchant died in 2005. They were together for almost 45 years. So.
And he directed Morris.
Oh yes, yeah, right. And the reason why they were able to do Morris was because Room with a View was such a huge success. It was nominated for 9 or 10 Academy Awards, and it won a few. But it also, I think, was made for maybe $2 or $3 million and wound up making a world total of almost $100 million. And so that enabled them to get the financial backing to make Morris. Otherwise,
Right.
probably wouldn't have been able to find, finances for that. Because again, they were they were among the first real independent filmmaker. I mean, they were making these films. Their first film was made in 1963, The Householder.
Right. In India, and they did a few in India.
Yes, and they're all very good. Yeah, especially the Shakespeare Walla, and then later Heat and Dust, and they're all really superb movies.
Right.
Well, this gets into the question of gay themes and a gay aesthetic, or a homoerotic or homosensible aesthetic that isn't overtly gay characters.
Right.
That I'm interested in, if I had ultimate amount of time to parse through the reviews here in the old B.A.Rs and see which writers got that. Like they do these straight films and then they find the queer aesthetic sometime in it. A little more obviously in the TV show Pee-wee's Playhouse. That was an abrupt segue. It was just the gayest show ever. And of course, everyone watched it, adults and kids alike. But I mean, the dearly recently departed Jeannie, Jambi, it was something that they can get gay out without saying it being overt. That's what I wonder, just how, as opposed to moving on to 1989, a feature with Marlon Riggs.
Right.
The Pivotal Tongues Untied, that's now out on a Criterion collection.
Yes, and it's really great. I mean, they last year when you had the whole fracas over the George Floyd murder, they came out with a mea culpa because they were accused, and rightly so, of not, mostly just, Criterion, which is the premier, DVD and film restoration group. They were accused, mainly just doing white, artists and films, or whatever. So they did a whole mea culpa about it, and one of the results of that is they did the complete collection of all of Marlon. They brought all of Marlon Riggs' films together, as well as the documentary that was made on him. Right. And then they also this month they're coming out with the complete movies of Melvin Van Peebles, who just died a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's
anyway,
a lot.
Yeah.
Moving on to TV. Do you remember 30-something in 1989?
Yes. Right. I love that show.
Oh my God.
But the controversy on this was they were the first to have a gay couple in bed. I mean,
right.
And they got advertisers canceled, and it was a whole big kind of.
But it was also removed from reruns or people.
Right. And you never saw that couple again. That was their last appearance on the show.
Well, fortunately, David Marshall Grant, who played one of the gays, he went on to an illustrious career on the theater and as a director, but he was a cutie pie. Yeah.
The other guy was good too, Peter Franchette, I think his name was. I remember.
Yeah, not gay, but David came out later. I did an interview with David for Our Week and about this play he did, K2, and it was basically like, okay, can you come out now? Because I know you're gay. I was early in trying to figure out how to say this in an interview. And he was like, not right now, but thanks. It was like I was offering him a cocktail. And he came out later and it was like, well, who didn't know that? Anyway, so we're moving on to the 90s, the early 90s, of course. We're going to have some bits with the new queer cinema, as it's called, Killer Pictures, Todd Haynes, etc. And
also, I was at the Berlin Film Festival when all these directors were there, and Sandy, who did that documentary on Orthodox Jews, gay Orthodox Jews, Sandy, do you know what?
Trembling Before God.
Yeah.
And later he produced one on gay Muslims.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, but it was strange to see everybody there together at the Berlin Film Festival. It was also that came out that film about Brian Epstein and John Lennon on a trip.
Oh, right. Yeah, the cute little short one where they allegedly have an affair.
Yeah.
Here's a bit on Tom Kalin and Greg Bordowitz's little AIDS education videos. They were my ACT UP buddies in the Cenozoic era. Very creative stuff. Lower East Side.
Oh, and also lots of people were upset with Tom Kalin with Swoon because they thought, why are you making a film about gay murderers?
Oh, but it was
Yeah,
so
but that
pretty.
again was part of the aesthetic of the new queer cinema, where you could, they wanted to present gay people, not as paragons of virtue, because, early, in the early years of liberation, they wanted they wanted to present role models, so that straight people wouldn't feel threatened by them. But as acceptance of LGBT people grew, then they feel, well, they could present real life characters that had flaws and yet, still would be interesting to watch on the screen.
Okay. We should also say this based on the Leopold and Loeb murders.
Right, the 1940s.
Alfred Hitchcock made a film called Rope.
Yeah, written by, of course, that was written by Arthur Lawrence, who was a gay playwright and screenwriter.
Of the book for West Side Story?
Yes, and he also did The Way We Were. He wrote The Way We Were based on his McCarthy. He was blacklisted for a while by the McCarthy hearing. So
see, that's
he has a wonderful memoir. It's worth reading. It's very my God. He talks about every sexual experience he ever had. He had a long affair with a woman, the ballerina Nora Kay, for years. So
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Let me go back. I'm jumping forward here with let's talk about a little bit about, while we're on it, the another queer new cinema.
The Living End, Gray Araki.
Now, did he borrow this heavily from the Tim and Pete, the book? Or do you think it was more his own
it's I don't know.
Because there's a book author who did several of these, let's get guns and be rebels and drive all around LA and stuff, that I really feel like he got his inspiration from. And that's why this is one of his more coherent films, because films based on books usually are. That's my statement.
I thought it was called The Gay. I remember, wasn't it called like The Gay Thelma and Louise? Because that movie came around the same time as it.
Right. Yeah.
It was powerful, and the message was you shouldn't be ashamed to live your life and be wild if you're gay and have HIV.
Yeah.
But also, don't forget Greg Araki. He's mentioned on the same page. Greg Araki did so many great films.
Yeah, Mysterious Skin is one of his.
Oh yeah, that's phenomenal. And
I just posted a thing about Scott Heim being the best item of this year for our 50 and 50, and he was very appreciative. World Pals. I always admired his stuff, but I just find that a lot of these literary gay films, the ones that are based on novels, are better in terms of plotting, character development, because a lot of gay filmmakers around this time and afterwards just were like auteurs who were just telling their own story. Anyway, so Catherine did it. Speaking of Ray Chalker, here's an exterior shot of the Rawhide 2, where they filmed scenes of Basic Instinct. Anyone care to give a one-sentence plot summary of this film for anyone who never saw it?
Sharon Stone spreads her legs and isn't wearing underwear.
That's the gist of it, really.
People die. Yeah, someone dies and she gets away with it. Yeah, let's move forward. So yeah.
Well, I mean, poor Ray Chalker. I did actually feel sorry for him because he actually received death threats through this. I mean, it was really.
Well, Sharon certainly made up for it with her philanthropy.
That was Paul Verhoeven, wasn't it? Or
no. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
right, because you should see his new film Benedetta, which is
about the lesbian nun. That's supposed to be very good. Have you seen it? Is it good?
I have seen it, and it's blasphemous. So if you don't want your dildos looking like the Virgin Mary, don't see it.
Oh, okay.
And I thought his science fiction one, the battleship Starship with the bugs, that was a very homoerotic film too. But I won't go into that.
Well, his early films were. Didn't he do The Fourth Man? Is that him?
Yeah, before the Starship Troopers one, he did The Fourth Man, which is overtly homoerotic and sadistic. But if you look carefully at the science fiction stuff, you'll see some things. Anyway, the paper also did books about Hollywood, including books that outed posthumously and other celebrities.
Donald Spada, who's he's gay.
Yeah.
And he wrote that one this year on Marlene Dietrich, but he did one on Laurence Olivier. He wrote a whole bunch of books.
Yes, he was always on the bestseller list.
Yeah.
This article is written by Warren Sonbird, who I wonder what happened to him. He was a good writer. Back to this, he also wrote that about Swoon.
Yeah.
And here's a controversial film, Boy's Own Story. No, Lost Soldier. Yeah, that's
Yeah, with Troy Garrity.
no. That's the one with
not a soldier. Sorry, it's a different one. Sorry.
All right.
This
No.
is about the soldier who seduces or falls in love with an underage boy.
Right.
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 Yeah. And what's? Oh, okay.
Moving on.
I thought there was an article in the book, A Boy's Own Story, also by Edmund White.
Oh, you're thinking of Edmund White's thing, yeah.
Yeah, this is where the clever headlines can be distracting and confusing.
Right.
I think he's referencing the fact that obviously Edmund White's book was about his own underage sexual experiences.
Right.
But no, I thought it was a very sweet film. It was obviously controversial. It has its moments, but it was well handled, well dealt with, or something. I don't know, but it was not attacked as furiously as other films that have much less.
Well, because it was foreign. If it was in
Is that it? So, okay, so I'll get my movies and books published overseas. So this is part of a big deal because The Celluloid Closet became a documentary.
Right.
So we're back to Jeffrey Epstein and Rob Epstein.
Friedman and Rob Epstein.
These are. I went to East Berlin and I lost my credit card in an East Berlin bank.
And this is relevant because
I put it in the slot. I thought, why not? Because if I ever see a slot, I put something in it, and my credit card never came back.
Sorry to hear that. Anyway, so these guys are not the WoW guys, as we clarified earlier.
Yeah, they are wonderful. Are they rich? They have no money then.
And here's a lovely 2-page spread with Lily Tomlin,
Right.
and David Aaronstein on the right does a remembrance of Vito Russo. David Aaronstein, of course, wrote the book Gay Hollywood, the Gay Closet, the Hollywood Closet. I forget. Anyway, it sold a lot of copies because he kind of outed Tom Cruise. Maybe not, maybe wrong, who knows. 2 more pages talk about the film and the history of gay cinema, all going back to the silent era and Georges Méliès when these guys are dancing together. So that's the first gay film in the upper left we're seeing.
Exactly. 1895, I think.
There you go. That's the way. You TikTokers, you're not doing anything new, you kids. Anyway, moving into the mid-90s, we have Bound.
I still show this film, and everybody loves it because it's a film with lesbians and they have sex and it's very sexy, but it's really a film noir, and it has a strong plot which is not about being the lesbian.
Right. No, it's there. That just is part of it, but it's also filmed beautifully. It's also loves cinema.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, shot for shot, it's just pretty and it's lurid and it's appropriate. Ironically, Aaron Blackwell wrote about this and criticized the Wachowski brothers as being straight men using a lesbian trope. The Wachowskis, of course, went on to do The Matrix and transition as transgender. Did not get enough pictures here of Jarman films, but here's the Derek Jarman book that we saw from Overlook Press. He was brilliant. I actually sat through Blue. His film.
Oh my God, that was his last one, wasn't it?
I sat through the whole damn thing. It's just Blue. That's if anyone doesn't get it.
There's an excellent documentary on him too. That's where
he did a film in Latin about Saint Sebastian, if I'm correct.
Right. He did,
yes. Very, very popular film. Sebastian was really popular. I mean, repertory in colleges, it followed me around from one university to another. So, Brandon, here on the right is your write-up of...
I wanted to, if I could find the article, I just wanted to, 1999, you say. Say something clever for a second.
Well, Hilary Swank won, did she win an
Academy Award? Yeah, for
that. Academy Award. And about, Brandon Teena, who was murdered, and there was a documentary made years earlier. It was quite pivotal, and just for the time, because this kind of film had not been made. But I think it really relives the question of who gets to play what.
I mean, it's not. I mean, nowadays it's not. Transgender people don't like this movie at all. They're really critical.
Yeah. Here it is. Here's the out of nowhere. It's this a little risque, but she's saying it herself. I interviewed Hilary Swank. I said she was telling me how she dressed as a boy and wanted to pass as a boy. She did that for over 2 weeks. But then at home, she said it was interesting. My husband we had just had our second wedding anniversary. Was my only anchor, my only place where I could be myself, be Hillary. At night, I would go home and I would just talk like me, now with Brandon's deeper voice. I couldn't actually live Brandon's life 24 hours a day, even though I slept with a dildo on. I strapped it on and slept with it to see what it felt like to just have something between my legs at all times. Now, I was just asking nice questions and that came out. But I think only people who read the Bay Area Reporter got that. I mean, you didn't read that in other newspapers. So.
No, they would never. It would not be an ET. You just unless wow.
No, never an EW.
Yeah. Wow. That's thanks for sharing, Hillary. Wow.
Yeah. Maybe too
it
much
makes
information
sense.
there.
No, it makes sense. When I was playing different roles in college, I would like do a little bit of method acting. I mean, like when I played Renfield, I didn't actually eat bugs, but I wanted to figure out how one could eat a bug. Or when I played Brick in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, I walked around with a crutch to figure out how to do it, and then it actually happened. So that was. It didn't not during the show. Anyway,
it's interesting because nowadays, of course, now the consensus is that really only transgender actors should play transgender roles. Yes. And Scarlett Johansson got in trouble a few years ago because she had accepted a role, and then she,
but then that film didn't get made.
She left.
But that film didn't get made, so all the trans actors who would have had roles,
right.
Nobody's going to make that film with and expect to make money then.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think inroads are being made. Victoria Rice captures every trans representation, like the Big Sky and other TV shows that have ongoing characters, and they're proven that they're they can be part of the actor.
But still, a Hollywood film costs so much money.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's all changing now because streaming and the pandemic have changed audiences' perceptions and expectations of what they're going to do. And if they don't adapt, like the smaller little streaming companies, like I just interviewed Chris Kelly of The Other Two. He directed that. He used to be with SNL. These cable companies and other companies are wiping out the big. What is happening to you? Are you got a poltergeist?
My lamb's getting excited by your conversation.
Okay, let's go back to pictures.
But, it's interesting because again, Hollywood won't make those kind of movies. Like Bradley Cooper wanted to play Leonard Bernstein,
right?
Who was gay and was married to a woman for many years, and he had just finished A Star Is Born, which was a huge success critically and financially, and he could not get any studio to make this movie that he wrote and and finally he's going to do it on Netflix because
Netflix will do anything there. Yeah. Thank heaven for them.
Well, speaking of fundraising and getting projects done, I think it's really amazing that in 2000, before he finished The Cockettes, or they finished, David Weissman and Bill Weber did basically the precursor of a GoFundMe for this amazing, now award-winning, acclaimed documentary about the Cockettes,
it's a great
trans squish drag troupe of San Francisco that led to Sylvester departing quickly and going Rumi, Misabi, John Waters. It's just a fabulous film for those who want some San Francisco history. It's very illustrative. But there was this full-page ad that I think the paper just gave them with like a nonprofit discount. And then the film went on to, of course, be wonderful and fabulous. But I love it.
It was like a midnight film in New York City.
It could be. It could replace Rocky Horror Picture Show. Brandon, here's one of yours.
Where?
Here's what on the screen.
Oh, I thought it was on the floor or something.
No, no, I can't do that.
It was shown at the Elgin. That's where I saw the Cockettes.
So moving on to this in 2000, Presque Rien was the big hit of the summer because the guys were cute and they were French and they made out on the beach. Anything else?
Oh yeah, we knew it by the English title. What was it called?
Presque Rien. Come dance with me. I can't remember.
I have the.
I can't zoom in either on the image, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't see it. We can't see the image. So.
If you look on to IMDb and put the French title, you get the English title.
That's how the internet works. But wasn't this part of a big European trend of the coming of age? Let's go ride off on a bicycle or swim in a lake kind of genre.
Yeah, like especially in France, everybody was turning gay. You know,
Right.
I think it's.
And they're always on the swim team, and one of them's a little shy. And
Well,
one of them has,
Wild Reeds. Did you see Wild Reeds? That was.
of course,
Oh
I
yeah,
did. Of course, hasn't everyone? I just think it's really funny that there's this whole subgenre that's basically one step above a Bellamy porn production, where there's two cute guys and everyone's okay, and then they shop in these little stores in Scandinavia, and then they fall in love. It's just so inconclusive, and there's really a weak narrative, but the guys are so pretty that we kind of let that go.
Do we skip? What year are we in?
We're in 2001 now.
Oh, we missed Paris is Burning, where I interviewed the cast.
I did not remember to scan that. I'm sorry. I'm really.
That's all right. If anybody watching this wants to come to my house, I'll read it to them. At my age,
is clothing optional there?
So they were, but they asked me to pay them. I said, we don't do that, because I guess they're really broke, and everybody was making money off Paris is Burning.
Yeah. Well, talk
Great
to Jenny.
documentary. Criterion reissued that one too.
Yeah. So this is one of Victoria Brownworth's columns going back to 2001. She would rate television shows, and she still does this. She's so enthusiastic. She gets
just
politics.
so you know, Jim, none of us can see that.
I know. I'm just look at it overall, and you'll see the most recent one. You can't read them. You have to go to the actual archives to read them. But I'm just showing you the layout and how they improved over the years. This is a good year. 2005, we're jumping ahead to David Namaud's coverage of Showtime, Logo, and how the cable channels were more diverse in showing queer people.
Could I just show one thing for 1 second to show how wild Bay Area reporter titles were? This was an. Can you see that? Or hold
on.
There you are.
No.
There we are.
He loves himself. He's putting we're seeing tons of Jim. Okay, where is this? It's like this. So this is Philip Roth, and he made a film about himself finally having sex with a woman, and
this the novelist Philip Roth?
No, he was a gay masseur besides being a filmmaker. So while he was giving gay massages, people kept calling up for the author, Philip Roth. They thought, because they both lived in New York. So I just thought very few publications would have that word in their title.
No, that's true. And, it really, we deal with that all the time now, like Shit and Champagne. It's like, no, I'm not putting an asterisk in there. I want people to find the title. So we know how to work around it. But we do get restricted in certain conservative libraries. Like if you go to a public library in Iowa, you probably can't access ebar.com just because we use profanity words in titles like that all the time. Here's a cool question from Mikey. Do folks remember what the reception was like when A Very Natural Thing was released in 1974?
Long before my time. So.
Could I lie and say that too? No, it's I think there were long lines. Everybody was excited about that film. I don't remember it being. People don't watch it now. Though it was re-released or in some format.
Yeah,
it was very good. Did anybody? Did you see it?
Oh, I saw it as a rental. Yeah, from Kim's Video in the East Village, like in the 80s. But again, it's like the naturalness of the thing. In comparing it to writing books, when I do that, is you have to concoct a conflict to keep pages turning. And a lot of these films are more atmospheric and character driven, and that's fine. But I like a story. I want to know that something's going to happen. It doesn't have to be car crashes or guns, like Bound or whatever, but there just has to be that. And a lot of these films, this is why the film festivals, I'm a little more choosy. It's like, is something going to happen sometime in the next hour and a half? Because if not, it's just pretty pictures moving along, and that's what a lot of the cinema. I'm so impressed with the fact that I can show these queer people on screen that I forgot to write a story. Anyway, so let me go back to the slides because we're still in 2005 and there's a lot of great visuals. Okay. If I can go to share the screen.
That's that brings up the whole issue, which has often been aimed at gay cinema, is that sometimes it's style over substance. And that, and that's kind of what you're referring to.
So here, this is where Showtime and Logos started doing their own thing and really taking
Noah's Ark. Wasn't that Noah's Ark there?
God, I love that show. It was so great, really. Yeah. And this is just a screen cap from As the World Turns, where these Luke Snyder, Van Hansis, and Jake Silverman played the first gay kiss on a soap opera, which is terrific.
Right.
Now, David Lamble could not be joining us because this is too technological for him, but he was a prolific film reviewer for us for many, many years. Yeah. He's talking about the 2011 Sundance Film Festival and actually a Crawford Barton photo that is included in David Weissman's We Were Here.
We Were Here. Yeah, a great documentary on AIDS. Yeah.
Wonderful AIDS film that just will have you crying. Get out the Kleenex because it's so amazing and so touching. Yeah. And not so touching, but still intriguing.
Oh, I love this film, That Weekend.
Very.
Oh, wait. Is that based on the book?
Andrew Hay. Or
I didn't know there was a book. I didn't know there was that much of a story to be a book, but it's cute. It was interesting, verite, sex, and conversation. Not bad.
Yeah, let's be. Okay.
He wrote that that later on that HBO series that wasn't very good that took place in San Francisco.
Looking.
Yes.
I liked Looking. That was a big controversy too. I don't have a picture or a review, but we reviewed it. We covered it. Some of us are in it. Victoria defends Glee. I got a better shot of her actual column about Glee, which I watched religiously, and when it was on, but never again. Right. I loved it. I don't know what others think of it, but it certainly was gay. And lesbian.
It was important because, again, it was one of the first times on TV that featured gay teenagers. Chris Colford. He was he played the gay character. Yeah.
Now, a very successful author, and Leah is very not playing my fair, doing funny girl on Broadway. She really had hopes in fiction and in real life.
She never nothing ever happened. I mean, she had a great voice. I mean, she was like another Barbara Streisand, but
now she's been canceled.
Oh yeah,
because of they said she didn't behave well on the set.
Oh, okay.
Does not play well with others. Allegedly. So,
allegedly, I wasn't there.
So here's one of David Lamble's many documentary reviews. I think it was for pre-Frameline. Documentary festival. No, San Francisco Documentary Festival. There's some religious relation. And here's Roberto Friedman, his regular much missed person. He's a much missed person, as well as his column out there always reference this, that, and the other thing. And here he's referencing Marsha P. Johnson and the death and life of Marsha P. Johnson.
The documentary by David France.
And the very artistic Looking for Langston.
And Looking for Langston, I saw that at the New York Film Festival. And there were lawyers in the audience for the Langston estate because they weren't allowed to use the poems. So when the poems came on, the screen went silent, and then they had to turn on the sound again.
What the wow!
They didn't want Langston to be gay, or
right, exactly. Yeah.
Very problematic. This is a little bit more about when we have the luxury of space to review straight films with no gay context whatsoever. There's Tom Hanks says the wonderful Mr. Roberts and some other things.
Oh, that was my review of that. Louise Brooks. It starred Elizabeth McGovern, the chaperone, but it was really about Louise Brooks and her emergence and.
That's queer enough.
Dancer. Yeah.
I love Elizabeth McGovern.
And it had her husband, the Elizabeth McGovern character, her husband was gay.
Oh, okay. So there's something
away from that.
Okay. I didn't know what the queerness was, but
and this was written by the guy that did Downton Abbey.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to show that pre-pandemic, we had the luxury of space to at least to just here's some old DVDs that are reissued. Here's classic The Fan with Lauren Bacall and of course the handsome Michael Bain. But as you both know, and other writers do, I like so-and-so is being released on Blu-ray. And my reply is, I don't care. It's 50 years old. We don't have room. Hopefully we'll have room for more of these reissues, but this is just an example of the luxury we had.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find the Pose article, but here's a picture from Pose that Victoria covered quite
canceled.
Well. And she also wrote a review of this European.
Very good movie, a French lesbian film.
It's a brilliant film. Yeah, the acting is
really
amazing.
good. Yeah, the French and lesbians are just phenomenal. I mean,
with cinema.
Well, Barbara Sukow was German. She was in all the Fast films.
Right. Yeah.
So here, Brian, is your write-up of Frameline Part 2, a lovely 2-part series. I could not wait to get this picture of Udo Kier and Swan Song onto our pages. I was so psyched. I've watched it twice.
A fabulous performance, really.
I love it.
I mean, the film is okay, but it's the performance that really lifts that up. And,
and here's some more.
And I interviewed him, and he's the first one to tell you how good he was too.
One director puts him in every one of his films. I forgot which director.
The Danish guy,
Lars von Trier.
Von Trier, yeah.
Right, yeah.
This is our Pride issue, so we have a luxury with all these wonderful advertisers supporting us to show all these stills from all these films and have all this space to really. This is all one issue. These 3 pages. The late Deborah Chasnoff, who I got to interview years ago for her documentary films, obviously she died of cancer. And in the upper right, you'll see the documentary she made with her partner about her. But such a variety.
It's a hard movie to sit through. It's good, but it's a difficult one.
It was gut-wrenching. It really was.
Prognosis.
This one page to me represents so much diversity in cinema compared to what we were looking at half an hour ago. Here's a documentary about Alvin Ailey, who was bipolar. There's a documentary about a lesbian who dies of cancer. Here's some stripper guys. Here's an Asian guy who's playing with sexual intrigue. Here's a whole documentary about queer comics.
Right.
And I just was really amazed with this year's Frameline and all these other festivals, Brian, that you have brought to my attention. Here's a documentary about Fanny, the groundbreaking rock band, and the whole. Go ahead.
It's interesting because the one good thing, one of the few very good things that's come out of the pandemic is that a lot of these festivals have gone, have had to, go virtual and online, and therefore they're accessible, to people, if you didn't want to fly to, to New York or wherever, you can actually, if you're willing to pay, of course, you can actually see them at home. So again, if you're really a film buff, you can, find these films that would have been much more difficult to access otherwise. So.
Yeah. And here's a little bit with the Howard Ashman documentary.
A great, wonderful documentary too.
So sweet. When I moved to New York, one of the first things he said was, "Whenever you want to go see Little Shop, let me know." I saw it like 3 times at that little theater in the East Village. Movie stars.
That was a big hit, and that's what brought him to the attention to Disney. So.
Right. It was very clever. It was a very clever thing. Him and Menken. So this is another trend too that Elijah Namath wrote about, was the multitude of gay-themed holiday, Lifetime, and other Hallmark classics. What do you guys think about it?
Well, that one with Kristen Stewart was horrible. I forget. But again, the problem is it's that old argument about assimilation versus. Is this what we want? This was the same tired old Christmas genre movies. The one, the poor single successful career woman, goes back to her roots and a beautifully decorated, like Christmas town. Yeah. And then, she meets, a gorgeous guy, and they fall in love and, her life is complete. There's so many things wrong with that kind of setup. But the fact that, now we have gay people involved, is that progress that, now we have gay people in these, awful genre movies?
Well, there are lots of gay people without taste who enjoy it. Not everybody's like us.
Yeah. But you might, you're hoping maybe that we would, that now that we have access to this, that maybe we could transform these and make something new and exciting about these kind of films instead
of. I got a press release from the company. There are about 20 new Christmas films, but I only saw one lesbian one.
Yeah, so they're not making a lot of them, but
maybe it's come and gone. I don't know. Who could say? There's another Lavender Tube column where Victoria's rounding up one of that Christmas one that you hated. Happiest Season, as well as some other TV stuff. And there's another one on the bottom there with a cowboy and a gay setup. And Brian, here is the print version of your first part of your 50th anniversary, where we're rounding it up and revisiting the same things we talked about in the beginning. Aren't I clever? The living end and the lovely All in the Family excerpt from our celebrity.
I want to reference one thing, because we didn't really talk too much about television because Victoria's in here. But I do highly recommend Apple Plus TV. Last year had this 5-part documentary called Visible out on television, where it traces the history of LGBTQ people throughout, like, starting in the 50s and going through right up to, like literally last year, and a very good, excellent thing on transgender people on television as well. And so I highly recommend, so if you want to, really have a good resource and with lots of clips, I highly, recommend that documentary.
Same with, I think Fabulous's subtitle is The History of Queer Cinema, but it's very good. Also, New Queer Cinema by
B. Ruby Rich.
And she also says some nice things about the Bay Area Reporter, how important it was.
I have it too. The other one I was going to recommend is another really excellent one, Gay Directors, Gay Films by Emmanuel Levy, very well-known gay.
Oh, Emmanuel, yes. He's
and it's about, and he really does marvelous discussions of Pedro Almodovar, Terrence Davies, Todd Haynes, Gus Van Sant, and John Waters, who we didn't mention again, one of the key figures. And so this is another really great resource book, and because he uses them to talk about general issues about LGBTQ cinema in general and issues.
Oh, that's great.
So I highly recommend this one too.
Well, since we're sharing books, I'm going to send both of you a copy of my 7th novel, Finding Tulsa, which is about a gay film director in the 1990s. Who kind of makes it, and other things. Y'all can buy it at bookshop.org, at your independent bookstore nationwide or globally. It's ebook or print.
We should have copies at the Fabulosa now.
They do. Fabulosa, formerly Dog-Eared Books, has a few of my books. They restock them on occasion, but you guys both get prizes for participating in this. I know a lot of research.
The Saint Sebastian one too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the pins.
Could I say something wonderful that I saw Dune this morning at 11 o'clock?
How was it?
And it's so wonderful because there's no overtly gay thing or lesbian thing in it. It's so boring, and the screenplay is so terrible. And it's like, I mean, how long could you look at sand? And
so it's worse than the David Lynch one, then?
I think so. But I mean, that was stillborn. But I thought it was going to be about Fire Island. I thought the film was Dune. But it's very disappointing.
Well, I watched the TV series and the original, and I'm going to watch the other one because I read the books in junior high school. It's like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I just have to because I'm a nerd. But are there any other actual films other than the ones you've written about recently for us that you recommend?
The Power of the Dog is terrific.
Yeah, I wanted to get. I couldn't get a screener of that.
It stars what's Cumberbatch?
Kirsten Dunst and her husband Jesse Plowman or whatever.
And it's about if you read the book, the film's basically the same. It's about a really strong macho man who's in the book, he takes a bath once a month and not during the winter. And he makes fun of this young gay guy who's in his teens. And eventually you find out why he's making fun of the gay teen. Yeah. But it's really the
Jesse Plemons. He's married. They're married. Kirsten Dunst, and she's been already talking about as being nominated for Best Actress.
Yeah, it deserves. Like you can't believe Benedict Cumberbatch is a butch guy. I mean,
that's
yes. It's very Jake Gyllenhaal today. He does.
Yeah, I watched the trailer yesterday. One of you pitched it to me. Who's writing it?
I don't know. I pitched it to you, but I don't know. I might not have been the first.
Oh, okay. It's hard to keep track. I have to check my emails. Great. Well, this has been exhausting and energizing at the same time. I wish we could have covered everything that we have covered in the B.A.R. for 50 years, but we only have so many time. And you guys are brilliant.
I just want to say something too. I think, because I was thinking about it, particularly after I did my 2-part article. And a few years ago, I reviewed this book by Lillian Fadiman, a well-known
Yeah.
lesbian historian, The Gay Revolution, which is, really comprehensive, really talking about the whole history of gay liberation. But it's all from a political angle. And one of my critiques of that was the cultural stuff is as important and as transforming, I think, as the political. I mean, you can pass laws, but ultimately, I think it's the culture and the arts and people's personal experiences that ultimately change people's hearts. And I think, the B.A.R. and the films and the television stuff that we've covered, I think that has been as transformative to people. I remember 10 years ago riding in a train. It was in New York, and overhearing a conversation. Some like elderly woman was talking about, for years she didn't like gay people, and then she started watching Will and Grace, and so her whole opinion of gay people changed, and it seems kind of trite, and yet it shows the impact of not only do these films and TV programs help gay people kind of understand who they are and they see their lives up on the screen. But I think it can change straight people's perception of who gay people are, hopefully positively. And so I think what we've been doing, what the B.A.R. and other gay newspapers and magazines are doing is really key and just as important to the history of, our movement as any of the politics as well. So I just
many people from my generation, we were brought up with shame about our sexuality. Like I was afraid to go buy a gay magazine, and when the media starts showing positive images, that makes such a big difference. And many of my students at City College, you're seeing the difference. They're much more open, and more adjusted in that aspect.
Yeah, somebody asked me, I've been asked so actually multiple times doing interviews for books, like, do you want to change? Do you want to reach minds? It's like, I don't come from that perspective. It's just that the story has to be typed. It's more of an artistic obsession that has to be finished. I don't expect that any of my novels will change lives, but I remember watching That Certain Summer in
1971.
That long ago, and just it was on TV. And my parents just happened to have it on TV, and it's like I was absolutely transfixed by Mr. Sheen and Mr. Holbrook and the kid and everything, and it was like I knew immediately. And coming out happened very soon after because it was so obvious. It was just like, but I don't know how many. I'm always surprised when I read just like Fernanda. Hi, Fernanda said. Opposed to so many things I learned with it, that these new shows that we take for granted as elders are like, oh, you're using this, that, and the other thing that I saw in this film 20 years ago or that. And it's groundbreaking to some 20-year-old kid or 15-year-old kid in Iowa or even Sacramento. Whereas for us, it's like, I see what you're doing there and you're clever, but you did not reinvent the wheel. But to someone who hasn't seen the things that we've been talking about, 50 years of cinema and TV, it's helpful to them, and that's great.
That's a key difference between, I think, then, 50 years ago and now is that, because younger people have with the internet, they have access to all this information that we didn't have when we were growing up. I mean, I grew up in New York, but I mean, I know people, friends that grew up in other areas of countries, and they thought literally they were the only gay people because they didn't have access to any information or books or anything. And of course, that's what I think is what the major difference is between then and now. So that people, even if you're living, let's say, in a terrible homophobic town in Nebraska, you're not alone. You're not the only. You can go online and have get access to virtual groups or chat with other people. So you're not alone. You're not by yourself. And I think that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's true. And we're definitely coming forward with a lot of, I mean, it's hard to keep up really with all the gay TV shows. I send Victoria, hey, there's lesbians on this show. Hey, there's bisexuals on that show. It's amazing how blended in we've become to the point where it shouldn't be, being LGBT should not be the storyline. It can be, go ahead, reinvent the wheel. But for me, it's like when I see someone who just happens to be, and then here's the rest of the story, I'm much more pleased because it's a more mature perspective.
Yeah, and luckily we're moving beyond just the coming out story, which for, in the early years was the principal theme, but now luckily there's much more stories about relationships and other things related to being gay and not just coming out. Although there's still pops up on occasion as well.
Which reminds me, go see Benediction, which is a new film about Siegfried Sassoon, the poet.
The World War I poet, yeah.
Right, and his Wilfred Owen, who got killed.
Right.
It's a phenomenal movie. I saw it was part of the Toronto Film Festival.
Oh, good.
It's really quite amazing.
Lots coming up. So everyone, you probably know you can read news stories and film articles by Brian and Brandon and others on ebar.com. You can pick up the paper if you're in the Bay Area. You can also look at the PDF version on issue.com. That's with two
latest issue
with some typos I won't go into. Also, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. Go to YouTube and look up Bay Area Reporter SF and subscribe. We don't post a lot of stuff. We won't annoy you with things. You can also join the B.A.R. membership drive. You can donate money and get prizes like books from me and other things. But also you can sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get 5 emails a week with just links to the stories. No spam, guaranteed. So support the B.A.R. so that we can support these writers and who support the films and television that we've discussed for the last hour and 27 minutes. Thank you, gentlemen, both of you and everyone.
Thank you, Jim.
And we'll see you soon. Have a good time.
Have a good seeing you, Brandon.
Yeah, okay. Gesund.
Gesund. Bye. I'm going to end the broadcast.
Okay.
And